Hello, I'm Robert Rojas, a servant of our Lord Jesus Christ. I will be sharing with you one of my Defending the Faith lessons. In this video, we will continue our discussion about the pre-existence of Christ. This video is now the ninth part of the series. It is undeniable that man cannot exist before he is conceived and born. If someone claims that he existed before he was conceived and born, then he must have been hallucinating or out of his mind. So if someone really existed before he was conceived and born, then he must not just be a man, he must be God in human form. Now in Matthew chapter 22 verses 41 to 42, we can read, "While the Pharisees were gathered together, Jesus asked them, saying, 'What do you think about the Christ? Whose son is he?' They said to him, 'The son of David.'" It is very clear that Jesus asked the Pharisees about Christ, and they answered that Christ was the son of David. Now, what was Christ's follow-up question to the Pharisees? In Matthew chapter 22, verses 43 to 45, we can read, "He said to them, 'How then does David in the Spirit call him Lord, saying, "The Lord said to my Lord, sit at my right hand till I make your enemies your footstool"? If David then calls him Lord, how is he his son?'" This question is a very important question that some people will not care to understand. Let us analyze carefully the important question in verse 43. It says, "How does David in the Spirit call him Lord?" It is very clear that Jesus reminded the Pharisees that David called Christ as his Lord. How could David call Christ as his Lord if Christ never existed during the time of David? Thus, it is very clear that Christ has pre-existence. He already existed during the time of David. He existed before he was conceived and born. Therefore, Christ is not just a man. He must be God in human form. So, think. What did David say? In verse 44, David said, "The Lord said to my Lord, sit at my right hand till I make your enemies your footstool." It is very clear that the real God, Yahweh, Jehovah, or Lord himself, said to Christ, "Sit at my right hand till I make your enemies your footstool." How could the real God say it during the time of David if Christ did not exist yet? Thus, it is very clear that Christ has pre-existence. He already existed during the time of David. He existed before he was conceived and born. Therefore, Christ is not just a man. He must be God in human form. So, think. So what happened to the Pharisees after Christ asked them a heavenly question? We can consider such a question as a heavenly one because it was not earthly. According to the flesh, Christ is the son of David. That is earthly. But when Christ is the Lord of David, that is heavenly. So what happened to the Pharisees? In Matthew 22 verse 46 you can read, "And no one was able to answer him a word, nor from that day on did anyone dare question him anymore." They were not able to answer Christ, and no one dared question Christ anymore. That should be the attitude of the unbelievers if they claim to truly love and follow Christ. They should not keep on questioning about the deity of Christ. So, think. Some people cannot understand Christ because they do not seem to be spiritual people. They are always thinking that Christ is just a man, even if they can read a lot of verses in the Bible about the deity of Christ. And even if real Christians post articles for the unbelievers to understand as to who Christ really is, they seem to be blinded already. Real Christians can understand this because they believe that Christ is one of the members of the Godhead. Thus, he has no limitations. He can appear in any form he likes. So, think. Again, it is very clear that Christ has pre-existence. He already existed during the time of David, and Christ was already the Lord of David long before Christ was born according to the flesh. Christ really existed before he was conceived and born. Therefore, Christ is not just a man. He must be God in human form. So, think, think, think. Thank you very much for watching. I hope you have learned some very important truth, and I hope that you share this to your loved ones, friends, and acquaintances. May God bless us all.